So, you see these headlines, right? A Muslim country firing missiles at other Muslim countries. It just doesn't seem to add up. But what if I told you that, according to the sources we're looking at today, this isn't really about neighbor versus neighbor at all? It's actually about a fight that's been brewing for 100 years, all centered on foreign military bases. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to unpack what's really going on with Iran's attacks.
So yeah, the whole situation looks incredibly confusing from the outside. You hear about Iranian missiles landing in places like Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and you think, what is going on? But then Iran comes out and says, hold on, we're not aiming for them, we're aiming for the American and Israeli military stuff inside their borders. So what's the real story here? Let's get into it.
Well, to really get a handle on what's happening right now, the sources we've reviewed argue you have to rewind the clock, way back. We're talking a full century, back to the end of World War I, because that's where this whole story of foreign military bases in the Middle East really begins.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Our story kicks off at this huge turning point in history. The Ottoman Empire, the last big Muslim superpower, just falls apart. And right in that moment, a totally new playbook for how to control the Middle East is born.
So, picture this. World War I is over. The Ottoman Empire, which had been in charge for literally centuries, is just gone. The whole map of the Middle East is up for grabs. So, who steps in? The British Empire. But they had a big problem. They knew, for a fact, that the local Arab populations weren't going to just accept some foreign non-Muslim guy showing up and taking over. So they came up with a really, really smart plan.
And this is where it gets fascinating. Here's how their model worked. On the surface, they'd install local Arab kings. These kings would handle all the day-to-day stuff, building roads, schools, cities, all the things their people would see. So they looked like real independent leaders. But that was just the public face. Behind the scenes, the British held all the cards. They control the military, all the defense policy, everything, all from their own network of military bases. And get this, those kings, they couldn't so much as move a single soldier without getting the okay from the British.
And you know what? This system of indirect rule actually worked pretty well for the British for a long time, for decades. But then World War II happened, and it just completely drained them. Financially, militarily, the British Empire started to weaken, to pull back, and as that old superpower faded, a new one was watching very carefully, ready to step right into its shoes.
That new power, of course, was the United States, and they were paying close attention. They saw just how effective that British blueprint was. You use military bases to project your power, you lock down access to all that oil, and you keep the local rulers doing what you want them to do. It was a perfect model. So, according to the sources, the U.S. didn't just admire it, they decided to adopt it and make it even bigger.
But it wasn't exactly a copy-paste job for the Americans. They ran into a problem. Some of the new Arab leaders were strong nationalists. They weren't interested in being puppets for anyone. Our source material points specifically to a guy named King Faisal of Saudi Arabia. The moment he came to power, he looked at the small American bases his father had allowed, and he kicked them out. He just shut them down. This was a real obstacle. If the U.S. was going to build the huge network of bases it wanted, it was going to need a really, really good excuse, some kind of major event, a pretext. And this, right here, is where the whole story takes a huge, dramatic turn. Because according to the narrative in our sources, the United States was about to get the perfect pretext it needed, and it would come from the actions of one man, Iraq's leader, Saddam Hussein.
Okay, so let's be clear about what the source is arguing here. The U.S. needed something big, something so scary that those same Arab leaders who were saying no thanks to American bases would suddenly be begging for them. They needed an event that would make them not just allow a massive U.S. military presence, but actively ask for it. And that event was Saddam Hussein's 1990 invasion of Kuwait.
So why does Saddam do it? Well, you've got to look at this number. $60 billion. That's roughly how much debt Iraq was in after its horrible 8-year-long war with Iran. And who do they owe that money to? The very same Arab countries, like Kuwait, that had backed him in the war. So, when they came knocking to get their money back, Saddam basically said, nope, not paying.
So things got tense, especially with Kuwait. Kuwait started pumping more oil, which made the price drop, and that really hurt Iraq's already broken economy. So Saddam decides, okay, I'm going to invade. But, and this is a key moment in the source's narrative, before he sent the tanks in, he met with the American ambassador.
And the message he supposedly got was something like this: "We won't stop you. This is not our fight." For Saddam, hearing that was basically a green light. He thought he had a free pass.
And this is where the source lays out what it calls a calculated strategy. It's like a 4-step plan. Step 1, let Saddam invade Kuwait. Step 2, the moment he does, flip the script and publicly condemn him. Step 3, U.S. officials rush over to other Arab leaders, especially the Saudis, and show them evidence, satellite photos, intel reports, saying, "Look, you're next on his list." And step 4, the terrified leaders ask America for protection, and the U.S. says, "Of course, but we'll need to build some large, permanent military bases on your soil to do it." The perfect trap.
And it worked. Just like that. The pretext was a massive success. Suddenly, the door wasn't just unlocked, it was blown wide open for the United States to finally build that huge network of military bases they'd been wanting for decades. And this network, according to our source, was about to completely change the rules of the game in the Middle East.
So after the Gulf War, you see these massive American bases popping up all over the place. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, the whole Gulf. But the source argues these bases had a dual purpose. Sure, they were there for American interests, but they were also perfectly positioned as forward operating bases to protect Israeli interests too. This gave both the U.S. and Israel incredible leverage over the entire region.
And this right here, this is the absolute heart of the problem, at least from Iran's point of view. The source makes it clear, these weren't just quiet bases where soldiers hang out. No way, these were active operational hubs. They were used to launch the invasion of Afghanistan, they were used for the 2003 invasion of Iraq, for airstrikes in Syria and Libya, and even more recently, to hit forces in Yemen who were seen as a threat to Israeli shipping. So when Iran looks at these bases, they don't see defense, they see the engine driving all foreign intervention in the Muslim world.
And that brings us full circle, right back to today. For more than 30 years, this network of bases was basically untouchable. No country in the region dared to challenge it directly. But that has changed. Iran now feels it was directly attacked on its own soil by the U.S. and Israel. And so, according to our source, it has now become the very first Islamic nation to stand up and openly fire back at these American bases.
And this wasn't just some random potshot. No, this was a coordinated attack. Iran went after specific, really important American military assets all across the Gulf. We're talking places like Camp Arif Jan in Kuwait, which is a massive supply hub, and Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE. The source claims that's where some of the first strikes against Iran came from. Plus, other key spots in Iraq, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia.
And from what's been reported, these attacks hit their mark and did some serious damage. The source points to some big losses for the U.S. military. For instance, a super advanced billion-dollar radar system in Qatar, which is a huge deal for air defense in the region. A big refueling plane in Iraq, and 5 large military planes that were just sitting on the tarmac in Saudi Arabia. So how'd they do it? The source claims Iran used a clever tactic. First, they'd send in swarms of cheap drones to distract and overwhelm the air defense systems. Then, while everyone was busy with the drones, they'd fire their real weapons, the hypersonic missiles.
Okay, but what about the reports of missiles hitting civilian buildings, hotels, things like that? That's where things get really murky. In some cases, Iran has actually apologized, but in others, they completely deny it. They claim they were aiming at secret CIA and Mossad spy offices that were intentionally hidden inside civilian buildings. And then, the source brings up an even darker possibility, the idea of false flag attacks. This theory suggests that maybe Israeli agents are conducting some of these attacks themselves to make it look like Iran did it, all in an attempt to spark a massive, destructive war between Sunni and Shia Muslims.
And really, this quote from Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, which is cited in the source, just cuts right to the chase. He says, as long as American bases remain in these Muslim countries, this war will continue. There's really no misunderstanding that. From Iran's perspective, the problem, the reason for all of this, is the simple fact that this network of American bases exists on their neighbor's soil.
So let's just pull all this together. The argument we've unpacked from our source material is this. What Iran is doing right now isn't about attacking its Arab neighbors. It's about directly challenging a whole system of foreign control, a system that started with the British Empire and was then picked up and expanded by the United States. A system that relies entirely on this network of military bases, which Iran views as the main tool for Western and Israeli power in their backyard.
And that really leaves us with one final and honestly a pretty unsettling question that this whole analysis brings up. You've got Iran, who says it's determined to get these bases out, and you've got the United States, which is just as determined to keep them there. So, where does this go? as the attacks get bigger and bolder, is a much wider, much more devastating regional war, not just a possibility, but maybe inevitable? Thanks for joining us for this explainer.